is a gift of joy, isn't he? Oh. So part of what we do at Ministers' Conference or the Ministers' Gathering, I think we have another name for it. Basically, all the ministers abandoned their post last week and got together and caused a little bit of trouble. We had to hide out in Canada to do it. But we talked about some of our history and some of where we're going. Part of my history is having gone to Catholic school. And in my history, there's a different God than the one I know now. Does anyone else have that experience? Just a little bit. Okay. So now I was a kid in ministerial school? No, in Catholic school, in grade school. One of the things you did not want was to get called in front of the nuns, in front of the principal. If you were really in trouble, you got called in front of the priest, who apparently was somehow more powerful. And there were a couple of kids in my class that were forever getting in trouble. Forever. And they happened to be a pair of boys. And I can't remember their names for the life of me right now, but I heard about how they had done something that was way over the top and got called in front of the good father. It's not father, by the way. If you're Irish Catholic, it's father. It's Father Keenan. And he looked at the first, he brought them in separately because if you got to scare a kid, that's what you do. And just looked at him in silence for a little while and said, "Do you know where God is?" And of course, he's freaking out. He's afraid to say anything because if you get that answer wrong, you're in big trouble. And the priest thunders at him, "Do you know where God is?" And because the kid couldn't answer, the priest sent him out in disgrace. Brought in the other one. Did the same thing. "Do you know where God is?" I don't remember what the correct answer was, but that poor kid was so freaked out, he raced out of there, grabbed the other kid, and raced away. And the first one said, "Do you know what the heck they were talking about?" And said, "No, but I think they think we stole God." It's actually just a joke, and I embroidered it with some names I know. Did anyone ever feel like somebody stole God? You know, you're doing your prayer work, and you're doing your prayer work, and you're doing your prayer work, and it's like, dude, what'd you go on break? There was a book I read when I was a kid called "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret." Did anyone remember that? I can't remember anything about the book except its title. But I remember the question, "Are you there, God?" And often in our lives, as we go through our path, our seeker's path, there is that question. Are you there? Or am I just babbling up here? Is this like the world's greatest con? So I'm going to answer your question today. Our question. I'll share it with you. The answer is both yes and no. Are you there, God? The answer is no. No. Have you ever been on a long road trip and somebody in the back seat, who shall remain nameless, Kelly, says something to the effect of, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" Till you want to just pull over and say, "Yes, get out." God is not there. God is here. In Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes writes, "We cannot find God outside the self because we cannot go outside the self." Wherever you go, there you are, that kind of routine. You will not find God out there until and unless you are willing to look within at all that scary stuff, at all that stuff you've ever been accused of, at the horrible stuff that comes up in the back of your head when you are in the silence, that stuff you've been avoiding by being busy? Or is that just me? One of the first things I learned in this philosophy is if you will find the chutzpah to just sit down and be silent and face that thing you've been avoiding for the past several decades, generally it takes no more than 5 minutes for it to fade away. You sit with it, and now in maybe 5 minutes, you have faced down that thing you've been avoiding, some of us for decades. That feeling of not enough, that feeling of broken, that feeling of never will be enough, that this is the great con, that somehow I'm supposed to try harder and harder, and every time I get close to achieving my goal, somebody moves the finish line. If I could just be perfect enough, if I could just give enough joy. You ever seen somebody who's burnt out and still trying to give joy? Go on and be happy. You're entirely welcome to it. My last nerve. And so part of that is because we're still looking for God outside of us. I am here to tell you that I still do that. I still think if I can just listen to the right minister, if I can just read the right book, or in my case, buy the right book, because the stack has gotten rather high, if I can just earn enough money or get enough people in here or be nice to enough people long enough, somehow God will approve of me. Somehow I will be enough. I will be good enough. I will find that moment of perfection in which I perhaps shine just a little bit. My feet leave the floor and I'm out here with the Alleluia chorus right behind me. And all of you know that I'm a good minister. Yeah, I think that might happen in Hollywood, especially the glowing part. Could you imagine if somebody walked around here glowing? We'd all be wondering, like, what fish did they overeat because the plankton is bioluminescent. I, like you, have fallen for that trap over and over. And what I know is that's the con. That's the lie. Us running around in circles trying to be good enough is just a distraction. Where if we would sit down and become still and go within, we would find that all of that joy and all of that love is already there. Yes? We all know this in our heads. Sometimes it's a little harder to know it in our hearts. So when we go within and say, "Are you there, God? Are you here, God?" and we get that resounding cosmic yes, then the answer to "Are you there, God? Are you out in the world?" also becomes yes. That's where that second part of the yes and no answer comes from. Once we have recognized it within us, it becomes easier and easier to see it out there. As a matter of fact, it becomes kind of this echo chamber. It's like being on Facebook, where everyone agrees with you. Why? Because you unfriended everybody else. Only this is a good thing. You only hear the upliftment. You only see the true soul within somebody's eyes. Because you have found it in yourself, it becomes easier to see it out there. Now, some of us will also use the tool of practicing seeing it out there. That's called gratitude. Seeing the divine out there so that we eventually can find it within ourselves. It works in either direction. But until and unless you do that step of finding it on the inside, the outside's just kind of a good luck with that. Ernest Holmes also talks about spirit being outside of us and all around us when he says, "Everything that lives proclaims the glory of God. Every person who exists manifests the life of God." Every person who exists manifests the life of God. We are just individually clothed in these bodies, and all the same one mind out in the world having fun. Now, when you have company come to hang out with you, do you basically like put them in the basement and ignore them? If you do, the FBI wants to talk to you. But generally, you take them out for lunch, you show them the sights, right? You show them a good time? Oh, dear God, please say yes. Because I've watched your Facebooks. I know what you've been up to. Sandy's got nothing on me. When we have a guest, we show them the good time. What if you start to think of the divine within you as that special guest who is here to visit you for one lifetime? The divine can only go to the fun places, can only go to your joy if you take it as your guest with you. This is what actually got me over the hump of it. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to have healed. You don't always have to be working on something because your life is a mess. Did you know that? Is it possible that you have arrived? And all of that, self-help and self-improvement, you're improved already. That you are enough right now. And right now, as you are, requires you to allow that good and allow that joy to be experienced. Why? Because you are the great host. You are the great host to the God within, and you want to show God a good time, which means you have to be willing to have a good time. It's the best excuse for a party ever. God showed up. That is what we do here. We're here to be good hosts and hostesses to the divine within each and every one of us. To allow ourselves to get past the seeker stage and into the mastery stage. To give ourselves permission to not be healing anymore, but to be healed. Not searching for love, but being love. And that way we can share it with everybody else who comes in. If you are still in that seeker position, that's great. All of us need someone to go love on and go be the presence of healing for. When we run out of people in here, I'm willing to bet there's people outside. We can do this. And here's the other thing. Within quantum physics, and yes, we're going to go here today. Wish me luck. There is this idea of quantum non-locality, which comes from the idea of entanglement. Entanglement is, the way I used to explain it to myself was it's the chicken and the egg. Which came first? One comes from the other, comes from the other, comes from the other. When something is quantumly entangled, you can no longer interact with one without interacting with the other. There's a set of Schrodinger and Einstein have some letters that went back and forth that explain this concept. And Schrodinger talked about entanglement as the inability to describe two quantum systems or particles independently after they have interacted. Basically, once something is entangled, they engage in what's called quantum non-locality. And this is a quote, if two quantum systems meet and then separate, even across a distance of thousands of light years, it becomes impossible to measure the features of one system, such as its position, momentum, and polarity, without instantly steering the other into a corresponding state. You can separate them with light years. A light year is the amount of time it takes light to travel for 1 year. Or amount of space I just did the parsec mistake. It's how far a photon can travel in 1 year, a bit of light. Now, light moves pretty darn fast, yes? You can separate them by that much, and if you do something to one, it will have a reaction in the other. You you change the polarity, you spin it in the other direction, the other particle is going to change. It's also velocity and location. It doesn't matter where they go. Those two particles are always correlated. Those two particles will always be entangled. What if we assumed that the energy of life and the energy of God is so correlated within us that it doesn't matter where we are, the divine is also present, whether we think it is, whether we believe it is or not. Even if you think you're light years away from where God is, or your ideal self is, you are so entangled with that truth, there is no way to not be reacting to the same stimuli that God is. And so we did an exercise this week. We, as ministers, decided to get really serious about the well-being of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And we danced our prayers, and we sang our prayers, and we claimed good. There is no way that the Centers for Spiritual Living is not different this week than it was before I left. Where we started telling our truth about, is it okay to be a religious science minister and get sick? Is it okay to feel different? Is it okay to feel like perhaps we need to be telling some hard truths here? And you know what? CSL didn't fall apart when we said the ugly side. Ministers did the shadow work this week. And so we also did a ritual where we took both light and dark stones and created a pathway forward, a physical pathway. Those stones, I would suggest to you, are now entangled. Each and every one of them has now become entangled in the energy of that prayer. Each and every one of them is now entangled in the idea that we were all holding together, that God is and God is all there is, that we too are worthy of an answer of course, I am right here for you. I have always been right here for you. And that is the highest self we can know. And so we created this path, and we put our prayers into it because it was in the energy of the room. And now all of us are entangled. All these ministers are entangled in this energy of joy, in this energy of love, in this energy that is the very presence, the very life of God. This omniscient, meaning all-knowing, omnipresent, present everywhere, and omnipotent, powerful to do anything. Whatever you think is wrong with you, the divine is powerful enough to heal it, to help you see yourself as you really are. You are now quantumly entangled with your highest and best self. That person you wish you were, you already are. And so as we left, we took those rocks with us. And I have one of them in my purse. And it occurred to me on the flight home, what if we took those rocks and all that energy of prayer that they symbolize? I'm not saying I got a magic rock, guys. I'm saying that I have within that rock the energy of that mighty, mighty prayer that we danced. What if I was to take that rock and inscribe it with something I'm claiming for this center? And maybe put it in a bowl over here. And then what if you guys were to go find rocks and a Sharpie? And we just put them all in one bowl and let them correlate, let them soak in the energy of that prayer. Now, I don't care if you go get the pretty polished ones that they have in little gift stores with the word that you want, or you go pick up something out of your backyard and get those little Sharpies on it. If we were to put all of those in a bowl and let them kind of marinate in the energy of this sanctuary, what do you think would happen? They would become entangled. And then what if, as they build our new parking lot, we were to take those stones and put them in each space and smush them into the asphalt before it gets hard and dry. Maybe we just excuse ourselves to the people in the nice safety helmets, throw them out there and say, cover it up. It'll be our secret. That we are using this new parking lot so that anyone who parks there, whether they come into this building or not, is now infected. Infected with the urge to be healed, with the urge to live a bigger life, with the awareness that they don't have to be afraid of themselves or God or anyone else. We'll bring all that loving kindness energy back from Canada. And they really are that nice. Oh my goodness, complete strangers. You know, we would be talking on the bus and saying, okay, so how do we do this? And 3 or 4 people would answer. Oh no, honey, this is what you got to do. Every single one of them, the staff, it was all just now granted, I'm sure that they have their own issues. And there was so much loving kindness that we didn't really need to worry about it. So what if we take all that energy? What if we put it into the land, and we put it into our building, and we put it into our lives? Now, in order to make this work, guys, there's no point in putting extra rocks underneath asphalt as it's poured. But if we take that prayer and we concentrate on it, and we know it, and we absolutely infuse it in our minds, we create that entanglement. We won't be able to walk across that parking lot or into this building without being reminded that thou art that. Thou art all that and a bag of chips. That we are the very living essence of God, that we have created a space within our lives for that power and that love and that joy and that beauty to come forward. And it's so entangled with who we are that there is no longer any means to separate it. Einstein couldn't find it. Schrodinger couldn't find it. Heck, Schrodinger's cat couldn't find it. And so here we are stuck being healed. Here we are doomed to richness. Absolutely engraved into the book of life and sealed in it as those happy people. What if we were to do that? What do you think would happen? Would these seats be filled every Sunday? Would we have the energy and the power to go out in the world and create the world that works for everyone, including us? Creating homes, creating jobs, creating a sense of belonging, which is what we all really need, yes? So it was just a thought I was having. Next week, there will probably be a bowl with a rock in it. New people will be very confused. They might have to talk to us. I invite you to join me in the experiment. I invite you to take your word, whatever your word for God, whatever your word for good is. Stick it in the rock pile. Let it get entangled. Let's see what kind of mojo we can dance into being, yes? And how we do this is in part through prayer. It is the energy of prayer we're putting into the world. Because when we pray, what we're doing is being awake to that oneness with God, of God, in God. And so when I come here to pray, it's so that we are all in a field of oneness, in a field of being that is the very essence of life itself. And so I'll invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. And join me in the consciousness of life itself, the one mind in which we really truly are one, in which we really truly are part of that great omniscience, knowing all things, knowing what is possible, knowing the best of ourselves and releasing anything that looks otherwise. And so in this moment, I speak my word, knowing that it is the one mind speaking through me. And so I am speaking with the voice of everyone, all one. And this truth that speaks through me knows itself to be whole, perfect, and complete. Knows itself to be joyous. Knows itself to be mighty. Knows itself to be prospered, to be thriving, and to have so much good within it that it must share with itself in all its other forms. And so this mighty, mighty truth that is speaking now, the truth of life itself, the truth of love, is who we are. And in this moment, I accept that truth. I live that truth. I claim and demand to experience that truth as all of us. I demand an end to war and an agreement to be in the love that is our truth. I demand that we live from the peace that is our essence, the prosperity and the loving kindness that is actually the truth of us, and that now glows so brightly it crowds out the shadow of our mistaken beliefs about ourselves. I know and claim a rising up of the Centers for Spiritual Living so that we are seen and known and celebrated for the healing that happens here, for the prosperity and joy and the tools that we teach here, for the awakening that is happening here and now in this town, in this country, and on this globe. I know and claim that the Centers for Spiritual Living are rising up in our truth, and we are part of that. We are entangled with that good. It can no longer be stopped. It can no longer be denied. We have danced our truth. We have spoken our truth. We have sung our truth here. And now we allow Spirit to move it into being. We know what is ours to do. We have spoken our truth. We have witnessed that which truly is, and now it is Spirit, the law of cause and effect itself. That thing that makes 2 + 2 = 4. It is that moving it into being, and we get to witness it. We continue to witness it, whether it's in form yet or not. Resting in that, accepting that, reveling and celebrating that. I gratefully release this truth to the law of cause and effect, knowing it's already done. And so I call it good right now, and so it is.